Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and this is why when people, say, well, I don't see race, I don't see color, we're all Muslims. That does not make me feel more comfortable. That actually makes me more uncomfortable around you because it means that you will try to circumvent, you will try to navigate your way around the discomforts that comes along with acknowledging and recognizing our diversity. You will do that at the expense of just completely dismissing, the differences that are between us, the obvious differences that are between us. And you have some Muslims who that conversation is so uncomfortable that you would rather dismiss the differences that are clearly between us just so that you don't have to have that conversation, just so you can escape, the discomfort that is associated with that conversation, rather than embracing the fact that, yes, we are different. You're Arab, you're Pakistani, you're Indian, I'm African American. He's, West African, he's North African, he's, East African. We don't want to acknowledge the differences and the cultural nuances that come with those differences. But we'll rather just say, oh, I don't see differences. I don't see color. I don't see race. My parents raised me to be Muslim, not to see. That doesn't make me more comfortable. That is actually another form of racism. That's called aversive racism, where you try to ignore the differences that exist amongst us to make yourself feel more comfortable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, O mankind, we have created you from one male, one female. That shows you that our origin is one. Our origin is one. We created you from one male, one female. And we made from that one male and one female different nations and tribes. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And we have made you from that one male and one female. We have spread from you different nations and tribes. لِيَتَعَارَفُوا, so you may acknowledge one another. Not that you may dismiss, not that you may overlook one another, but that you may acknowledge one another. Acknowledge our differences. Don't say we're all Muslim. We're not just all Muslim. It's just like when a person says, Black Lives Matter, and then you have another one gets up and says, well, all lives matter. Yes, all lives do matter, but all lives are not at risk at this particular moment. So your statement, all lives matter, is really irrelevant at this point because all lives are not at risk. All lives are not in danger. You guys follow me? And it's almost like what Ali bin Abi Talib, radiallahu anhu, when he was dealing with this group called the Khawarij. And they would literally bust into the masjid in front of everybody on Friday and shout very loudly, disrupting the khutbah, La hukma illa lillah, there's no judge, there's no ruling except God's ruling. And Ali, radiallahu anhu, he said, Kalimatul haq urida biha batil. It is a true statement that there is no judge but God. But they only intend by it the dismissal of the judgment of the Khalifa, of the leader of the Muslims at that time. So while it is a true statement, there is no judge but Allah. There is no ruling, that should be passed except that it's Allah's, it's God's ruling. That's true. But the reason why they are using that is to dismiss something that is also true. You guys follow me? So sometimes people can utter a true statement, but they only seek to deceive by that true statement. So when a person says, Black Lives Matter, and then another person jumps up and says, all lives matter. Yeah, true. All lives do matter, but all lives are not in peril at this particular moment. All lives are not. It's just like one house on the block is on fire, right? One house on the block is on fire. And, the person who's the owner of the house says, my house is important. My house is on fire. And then other people come out of their houses that are not on fire and say, well, our houses matter too. It's just like, yeah, but your house is not on fire. Mine is. So your statement that my house matters too, I'm not dismissing that. But at this particular present, at this moment, your house is not, you know what I mean, in danger. So very important for us to not dismiss, the differences that exist between us. All right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I made you into different nations and tribes, liyata'arafu, so that you may acknowledge one another, so that you may recognize one another. You may recognize the differences that exist between you and deal with those differences based upon what is appropriate for each and every group. All right. It's just like a teacher in a classroom. One teacher may call themselves being fair and dealing with every single child, equally. And they believe that that's being fair, when in fact it is actually not being fair. It's actually discrimination, because you are clearly overlooking the academic diversity of your classroom, that every child is on a different level and you have to meet every single child where they are. Now, that might be difficult for you as a teacher, but the fact of the matter is that if you wanted to be equitable, there's a difference between equality and being equitable. Equality is treating everybody the same. Being equitable is treating everybody based upon what their situation necessitates. And that is what makes you an effective teacher, is that you look at every individual child and you meet every individual child where they are academically. Not that, I treat all of my students the same. That doesn't make you a fair teacher. That actually makes you an unfair teacher. All right? The concept, you guys understand the concept here?